It was a crisp Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles, and the streets were bustling with the usual weekend energy. People were enjoying the sunny day, shopping and exploring the city's vibrant streets. Among them was none other than Bruno Mars, the Grammy-winning artist known for his incredible talent and infectious charisma. But today, he wasn't in a recording studio or on a stage. He was walking through the busy streets of the city, his sunglasses perched atop his head and a casual hoodie keeping him incognito. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and please complete our 1,000 subscribers for more inspiring stories. Bruno loved these moments of anonymity. He could blend in, enjoy the atmosphere, and experience the city like anyone else. As he strolled through the crowd, he heard something that immediately caught his attention. It was the sound of music, not the polished beats of a studio production, but the raw, soulful voice of a street performer. Drawn by the melody, Bruno walked over to the corner where the music was coming from. Standing there was an older man, wearing a weathered jacket and a simple guitar slung across his back. His hands moved skillfully across the strings, and his voice, though rough around the edges, was filled with emotion and life. The song he was playing was a soulful ballad, one that spoke of hardship, love, and the beauty of life despite its challenges. Bruno stopped in his tracks, his heart stirred by the raw emotion in the man's voice. He had heard countless songs in his career, from chart-topping hits to deep cuts that never made it to mainstream radio. But something about this street performer's song felt different. It wasn't just the melody, it was the authenticity and vulnerability in the performance. It was the kind of music that resonated deeply, as though it was being sung just for him. Without thinking, Bruno pulled out his phone, recording the man's performance. He couldn't help but feel a wave of inspiration flooding through him. This moment, this connection to music in its purest form, reminded him of why he had fallen in love with the art in the first place. It wasn't about fame, awards, or money. It was about the music itself, the power it had to move people, to heal, to connect. The crowd around them was starting to gather, some pulling out their phones to record, others simply swaying along to the music. Bruno's eyes remained focused on the street performer, his heart still racing from the rawness of the performance. As the last notes of the song faded into the air, the crowd erupted into applause. The street performer smiled, his weathered face lighting up with a warmth that belied his rough appearance. But then something unexpected happened. Bruno, who had been standing in the background, stepped forward. The street performer looked up, a bit surprised to see someone approaching him so confidently. Bruno smiled, his trademark charm shining through despite the simplicity of the moment. "That was incredible," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "You've got something really special." The street performer blinked, clearly taken aback by the recognition. "Thank you," he muttered, his eyes widening as he realized who was standing before him. "Wait, you're Bruno Mars, aren't you?" Bruno chuckled, nodding his head. "Yeah, that's me. But seriously, that song, you've got something here. It's powerful." He paused for a moment, looking the man in the eyes. "What's your name?" "John," the street performer replied, still in disbelief. "John Taylor. I've been playing on these streets for years, just trying to make ends meet. Never thought anyone big would stop and listen." Bruno's face softened with understanding. He knew how it felt to be overlooked, to work tirelessly in the shadows, hoping for a break. "You've got something here, John. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a business card with his record label's contact information. "Give this a call. I want to hear more of your music." John's jaw dropped as he stared at the card in his hand. "Wait, are you serious?" Bruno nodded, his smile wide. "You deserve a shot, man. I believe in your talent." John stood there, still holding the business card in his hand, disbelief written all over his face. The idea that Bruno Mars, One of the biggest names in music had just given him his personal contact information was almost too much to process. For years he had played on these streets, hoping for recognition, but never expecting it to come from a superstar like Bruno. I don't know what to say, John stammered, his voice thick with emotion. I've been struggling for so long. I never imagined something like this could happen to me. Bruno smiled warmly, his eyes filled with genuine understanding. Don't say anything. Just believe in yourself, John. Your music is powerful and people deserve to hear it. You've got something special here. John couldn't believe what was happening. A few minutes ago, he had been just another street performer, singing for spare change and a little attention. Now, Bruno Mars, his idol, had not only stopped to listen, but had encouraged him to follow his dreams. John had always dreamed of being more than just a street performer. He had written countless songs, poured his soul into each chord and lyric, but had always felt like he was stuck in the shadows. Now, here was the chance of a lifetime. Thank you, John finally managed to say, his voice shaking. I promise I won't waste this opportunity. Bruno clapped him on the back, his encouraging presence filling John with a newfound sense of purpose. I know you won't, Bruno said. Take it one step at a time. Music is all about connection, and you've got a way of connecting with people. The two exchanged a few more words, and then Bruno gave him a thumbs up before walking away. John watched him go, still in awe. As Bruno disappeared into the crowd, John felt a surge of inspiration. He had always known that his music was good enough, but now he knew that he had the chance to prove it to the world. Determined, John immediately went home and set up a recording session at his small apartment. He couldn't waste a second. He wanted to make sure he was ready when the time came. He poured his heart into his songs, each one more personal than the last. But this time, he wasn't just writing for himself. He was writing for everyone who had ever struggled, everyone who had ever been told that they weren't good enough. John's music was about resilience, about holding on to hope when the world seemed to be against you. It was about rising above the noise and making your voice heard. As the days went by, John kept pushing forward. He recorded songs, practiced his guitar, and began putting together an album that he hoped would change his life. But in the back of his mind, he kept hearing Bruno's words. You've got something special. Those words were his driving force, his reminder that no matter how hard things got, he couldn't give up. Meanwhile, Bruno had been thinking about John often. There was something about the street performer's raw emotion and the authenticity in his voice that stayed with him. He could tell that John wasn't just another aspiring musician. He was someone with a message, someone who could inspire people with his story. One day, as Bruno was in the studio working on his latest album, he picked up his phone and sent a text to John. Hey, I've been thinking about you. How's the music coming along? Let me know if you need any help. John's heart raced when he saw the message. He couldn't believe that Bruno was still thinking about him. He quickly responded, telling Bruno about the songs he had been working on and how much his encouragement had meant to him. Bruno immediately offered to help. Send me your stuff and I'll take a listen. You've got a lot of potential, John. Don't let anything hold you back. John sent over the demo of his album, his hands shaking as he hit send. He had poured everything into those songs, and now they were finally in the hands of someone who could help make his dream a reality. The next day, Bruno responded, These are incredible. I'm going to set up a meeting with my producer. We're going to make something big happen for you. John couldn't believe his eyes. He had never imagined this moment. His dream was finally coming true. What had started as a casual encounter on the streets of Los Angeles had turned into an opportunity that would change his life forever. The days that followed were a whirlwind for John. What had once been a distant dream was now within his reach. Bruno Mars, his idol, was not only offering him support, but actively working to help him break into the music world. The reality of it all still felt surreal. John spent sleepless nights perfecting his songs, adding layers to the melodies, and tweaking the lyrics to reflect the depth of his story. He was determined to prove that he had what it took to make it in the music industry. The songs that he wrote were personal, raw, vulnerable expressions of his experiences, struggles, and hopes for a better future. He kept in touch with Bruno, sending him updates on his progress. Bruno's responses were always encouraging, his faith in John unwavering. The bond between the two musicians deepened, transcending the typical mentor-mentee dynamic. Bruno saw something in John that he couldn't ignore, a fire, a hunger, and an authenticity that reminded him of his own early days in the music industry. One day, John received a call from Bruno's assistant. "Hi, John. Bruno wants you to meet him at the studio tomorrow. He's set up a session for you to record with his producer." John's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment he had been working for his entire life. His nerves were on edge, but they were also laced with excitement. He had worked so hard to get to this point, and now he was about to have the opportunity to create something that could change his life forever. The next day, John walked into the recording studio, his stomach a bundle of nerves. He had never been in a professional setting like this before. But as soon as he walked through the door, he was greeted by Bruno's warm smile. "Hey, John, I'm glad you made it," Bruno said, patting him on the back. "This is your moment. Don't worry about anything. Just focus on the music." John nodded, trying to calm his racing heart. He couldn't believe he was standing in front of Bruno Mars, in a real studio, about to record his music. The thought of it made him dizzy, but he knew he had to stay grounded. He had come too far to let his nerves get the best of him. Bruno led him to the studio booth, where a producer and a few musicians were already waiting. The team was professional, and the setup was impressive. State-of-the-art equipment, instruments, and a full crew dedicated to making John's music sound the best it possibly could. The producer, a tall, sharp-dressed man named Alex, extended his hand to John. "I've heard a lot about you, John. Bruno's been raving about your talent. We're excited to get started." John shook Alex's hand, trying to steady his nerves. "Thanks, I'm ready." Bruno gave him an encouraging nod, and John stepped up to the microphone. The first few notes he played were shaky, but as the song began to take shape, he found himself slipping into a rhythm. The words flowed from him, and he poured all of his emotion into each verse. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment where everything he had worked for was finally coming together. Bruno stood in the corner of the room, watching intently. He could see the transformation in John's face as he sang. His voice, once unsure and tentative, had become stronger and more confident. Bruno felt a surge of pride. He had known from the beginning that John had something special, but seeing it come to life in front of him was even more powerful than he had imagined. Hours passed as John recorded multiple tracks, each one more heartfelt than the last. By the time the session was over, he was exhausted, but exhilarated. The songs had taken on a new life in the studio, and he knew that they were ready for the world to hear. Bruno approached him with a smile. "You did great, John. I'm proud of you. This is just the beginning." John's eyes were wide with disbelief. "Thank you. I can't believe this is really happening." "It is," Bruno said, clapping him on the back. "You've got a story to tell, and people are going to listen. I'm here to help you every step of the way." With the recording session complete, John was one step closer to his dream. But this was just the beginning. Bruno had promised him that this journey would change everything, and John was beginning to see that promise come true. As he walked out of the studio that night, he couldn't help but think of how far he had come. From a street corner singing for spare change to a recording session with one of the biggest names in the music industry, John knew that anything was possible now. The weeks following the recording session flew by. John couldn't believe how quickly everything was moving. Bruno had connected him with some influential people in the music industry, and suddenly, the street performer who had once barely gotten by was standing on the precipice of stardom. It felt surreal, but every moment was a testament to the power of hard work and the unexpected kindness that had changed his life. One day, John received an email from Bruno's team with a subject line that made his heart race. "Your first major show? Get ready." He opened the email to find an invitation to perform at a charity concert Bruno was hosting. It was the biggest stage John had ever been asked to perform on, and the thought of it made his stomach churn with both excitement and nerves. "I can't believe it. This is really happening," John whispered to himself, sitting in his small apartment, staring at the email in disbelief. He spent the next few days rehearsing, making sure every note was perfect. He wanted to give everything he had to this performance. It was his big chance. The charity concert was going to be attended by industry executives, celebrities, and people from all walks of life, all there to support various causes. Bruno had even arranged for John to perform a special set, showcasing the songs he had written. The night of the concert arrived, and John's nerves were at an all-time high. He arrived at the venue, a grand theater with a stage that seemed too big for him. The lights, the cameras, the crowd, it was all overwhelming, but Bruno had made it clear that he was ready. Bruno had given him the confidence to take this leap, and John wasn't about to let it slip away. As he walked backstage, he saw Bruno, who was preparing for his own performance. Bruno smiled and gave him a thumbs up. "You've got this, John. Just be yourself and let the music do the talking." John nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. The crowd began to fill the theater, and soon it was time for him to take the stage. When the moment came, he walked out into the spotlight, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped the microphone. He took a deep breath, remembering everything that had led him to this moment, the days on the street, the hours spent perfecting his songs, and the incredible people who had believed in him when no one else had. He felt Bruno's presence in the back of his mind, cheering him on, and he was ready. The music started, and John's voice rang out through the theater. The crowd was captivated, hanging on every word. The songs that had once been just a way for him to express himself now felt like a universal language that connected him to everyone in the room. With each note, he poured his heart into the performance. This was his story, his truth, and it was finally being heard by the world. As the final note of his last song echoed through the theater, there was a brief moment of silence. Then the crowd erupted into applause. John stood there, stunned, as he took in the overwhelming reaction. The cheers, the standing ovation. It was everything he had dreamed of and more. Bruno rushed to the stage, his eyes gleaming with pride. "You did it, John! That was amazing!" John couldn't stop smiling, feeling the weight of the moment sink in. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me." Bruno clapped him on the back. "You're the one who did all the hard work. I just gave you a little push. This is just the beginning, John. There's so much more to come." As the concert wrapped up and the night came to a close, John felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. He had come from nothing, and now, thanks to Bruno Mars and his own relentless determination, he was on the verge of something extraordinary. The road ahead was still long, but John knew that with hard work and a little bit of luck, he could achieve anything. Months passed, and John's career skyrocketed. His music reached millions of people, and he began performing in sold-out arenas. But through it all, he never forgot the small street corner where it all began. The kindness of a stranger, the belief of a mentor, and the power of music had transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined. One evening, as John walked down the street near his childhood neighborhood, he passed a man sitting on a bench playing a guitar. The man's voice was rough, but there was a beauty in the rawness of it. John stopped, listening for a moment before he stepped forward. "Hey, man," John said, a smile on his face. "I've got a story to tell you." He handed the man a card with his name and contact information. "You've got something special," John said. "If you ever want to make music, just let me know." As he walked away, he felt a sense of peace. He'd gone from being the one with no hope to being the one offering hope. And it was all thanks to the kindness of a stranger and the power of music to change lives. Thank you for watching till the end video. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends. To subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories.